She was a box office queen, a trash-talking prankster, a war hero, and a Hollywood rebel. Carole Lombard packed more chaos into 33 years than most do in a lifetime, and it's all true. Small-town girl, big mouth. She was born Jane Alice Peters on October 6, 1908, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Her parents split when she was still a child. Her mother packed up the kids and moved them to Los Angeles, chasing a new start. That move changed everything. Even as a girl, Carole was a handful. She played baseball with boys, climbed fences, and hated dresses. Neighbors called her a tomboy. She didn't care. She liked being loud. She liked being first. She liked winning. In 1921, at just 12 years old, she was spotted playing baseball in the street. Director Alan Dwan saw her and offered her a small part in a silent film called A Perfect Crime. She took it. Just like that, she got her first taste of Hollywood, and she wanted more. By her teens, she was acting full-time. She dropped out of Fairfax High School and got hired as one of Mack Sennett's bathing beauties. Young women paid to be funny, flirty, and fearless in slapstick comedies. She stood out, not just for her looks, but for her timing, her wild energy, and the fact that she didn't hold back. Around this time, she changed her name. Jane Peters was gone. Now she was Carole Lombard. At 16, she signed with Fox Film Corporation. They promised her leading lady potential, but just when things were picking up, she was nearly sidelined for good. In 1926, she got into a serious car crash. A piece of glass tore her face, leaving a scar on her left cheek. Back then, that kind of injury could end a film career. Studios wanted perfect faces. Fox dropped her. But Carole didn't quit. She learned how to work around the camera. She trained herself to turn her head just right. She mastered her angles. The scar, hidden, the attitude, bigger than ever. And Hollywood, about to meet its loudest, sharpest new star. Fired, scarred, and still unstoppable. After Fox let her go, Carole was 17, broke, and stuck with a scar Hollywood didn't want, but she wasn't about to disappear. She signed with a smaller studio, Path, and took whatever roles they gave her, mostly low-budget pictures where she was the pretty girl in trouble. Not glamorous, not respected, but she showed up and made noise. In 1928, she made Show Folks, and people started noticing. Her comic timing clicked. That same year, she signed with Paramount. This time, she was ready. Sound was shaking up the film industry. Silent stars with weak voices were fading fast. Carole? She thrived. Her voice had bite. It was fast, sharp, and packed with sarcasm. She didn't sound like a dainty starlet. She sounded like someone who could win an argument and make you laugh while doing it. Between 1928 and 1930, she appeared in over 20 films. Most of them were forgettable, but she worked constantly. She learned how to hit her marks, find her light, and steal a scene even when the script was garbage. Off-screen, she gained a reputation for being blunt and filthy hilarious. She cursed like a sailor and cracked jokes that made grown men blush. Reporters didn't know what to do with her. One minute she was posing like a goddess, the next she was mocking the whole setup. In 1930, she landed her first major co-starring role in Safety in Numbers, and Paramount finally saw her as more than just filler. She wasn't the polished type. She was loud, quick, and dangerous on camera, in the best way. By the end of 1930, Carole had carved out a small but solid corner in Hollywood. She wasn't a star yet, but everyone in the business knew her name. Directors liked her work ethic, crews loved her jokes, and audiences were starting to remember her face. Scene stealer in a man's world. Her breakthrough didn't come from glamour, it came from grit. In 1931, she starred opposite William Powell in Man of the World. Their chemistry was undeniable. Off-screen, sparks flew fast. They got married later that year, shocking the press. He was 16 years older, polished and private. She was loud, unpredictable, and borderline feral. Somehow, it worked. For a while. Their marriage lasted just over 2 years. They divorced in 1933, but stayed close. Powell once said, "I admire few people. I admire Carole Lombard." He meant it. Even after the split, he helped get her roles. He believed in her. In the early 30s, Carole's films weren't always great, but she kept stealing scenes. In No More Orchids and Virtue, she played women who weren't passive or proper. She brought heat, humor, and a sharp tongue, traits rarely seen in leading ladies of that era. Studios weren't sure what to do with her. She wasn't soft, she wasn't safe. But that edge was starting to matter. In 1932, she made No Man of Her Own with a rising star named Clark Gable. They didn't fall in love then. He was married, she was with Powell, but the tension was there. Audiences noticed. So did Hollywood. Carole also started pushing for better scripts. She knew what kind of comedy worked for her, and she fought for it. She didn't want to be the forgettable girl next to the man. She wanted her characters to punch back. By 1933, directors were seeing her as more than just a beauty. She had instincts. She was quick with improv. She made flat lines funny and turned boring scenes electric. Nobody handed her a career. She built it one smart move at a time. The Screwball Explosion. She didn't just land a hit in the 20th century. She redefined what funny looked like in Hollywood. Howard Hawks cast her as Lily Garland, a wild, egotistical stage actress with a screeching laugh and zero filter. It was risky. Most leading ladies played it soft. Carole came in like a firecracker. She didn't hold back. She screamed, flailed, threw tantrums, and made it all hilarious. The critics couldn't stop raving. The New York Times called her a revelation. Screwball comedy, a fast, chaotic blend of romance and slapstick, had its new queen. After 20th Century, the roles poured in. She starred in We're Not Dressing, 1934, with Bing Crosby, a shipwreck comedy that let her show off her physical humor. Then came Now and Forever with Gary Cooper and Shirley Temple, where she brought real warmth without losing her sharpness. In Hands Across the Table, 1935, she finally got a script that matched her style. Dry, flirty, clever. Her chemistry with Fred MacMurray was effortless. Audiences loved it. Paramount did too. But Carole wasn't just acting. She was running her own show. She fought for better dialogue. She demanded retakes if the joke didn't land. She told writers when their lines were flat, and she had the clout to do it. By 1935, she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood, earning $35,500 per picture. That number didn't just turn heads, it rattled egos. Studio bosses grumbled, male co-stars noticed, but Carole wasn't sorry. She earned it. Her movies made money, and her name packed theaters. She also broke every rule for how a woman in Hollywood was supposed to behave. She cussed, drank, played poker with the crew, and told filthy jokes at press junkets. Photographers would show up early hoping to catch her in something outrageous, and she usually delivered. She didn't want to be America's sweetheart. She wanted to be the funniest, boldest, most unforgettable woman in the room. And by the mid-1930s, she was. Gable and the Firestarter. Carole had already lit up the box office, but in 1936, she lit up Clark Gable. They'd worked together years earlier in No Man of Her Own, but now the timing was right, and the sparks were real. Gable was still married to Rhea Langham, a wealthy socialite. Carole didn't care. She wasn't the type to whisper behind closed doors. She made jokes about the affair, even in public. According to rumors, she once sent Gable a gift, a live pig wearing a diamond bracelet and a note that read, "To my favorite ham." He cracked up and fell harder. The two were Hollywood's hottest off-screen couple, but they weren't exactly fancy. Carole hated formal dinners. She preferred frying eggs in heels and blasting jazz records. She swore, drank, and drove too fast. Gable, known as the King of Hollywood, followed her lead. They hunted, fished, and gambled together. They didn't care who watched. Reporters wrote about their wild fights and makeup sessions. The press called them scandalous. Fans called them perfect. Carole wasn't trying to fit into anyone's idea of a Hollywood romance. She rewrote it. While other actresses posed for studio-approved photo spreads, she was taking goofy snapshots with Clark in the woods, covered in mud and grinning like a kid. In 1937, she starred in Nothing Sacred, one of the first screwball comedies shot in Technicolor. She played a con woman faking a deadly illness. It was outrageous, quick-witted, and a box office hit. Carole was flawless, biting, vulnerable, and hilarious. No actress could do what she did with that kind of material. She followed it up with True Confession, 1937, playing a pathological liar. Again, she flipped every Hollywood rule. Audiences had never seen a woman lie, manipulate, and steal scenes like that and still be lovable. Marriage? Maybe. Scandal? Always. But regrets? Not a single one. Mrs. Gable at last. In 1939, the King of Hollywood made it official. Clark Gable divorced Rhea Langham and married Carole Lombard. No studio wedding, no red carpet. They drove to Kingman, Arizona, and eloped at a small Methodist church. One photographer caught them holding hands and laughing like teenagers. America went wild. Fan magazines called them the royal couple of Hollywood. But Carole didn't care for the title. She called herself Mrs. Gable, ranch wife, and meant it. They moved into a 20-acre ranch in Encino where she raised chickens and grew tomatoes. He fixed up the barn. She turned the guest house into a hangout spot. The house was chaos. Friends came over to drink, gamble, and hear Carole tell dirty jokes that made even Gable blush. She once hosted a party where every guest had to dress as their worst self. Clark came as a jailbird. Carole showed up as a pregnant teenager smoking a cigar. The press never got the photos, but insiders did. Professionally, she kept working. In Made for Each Other, 1939 with James Stewart, she played a more grounded role, a struggling wife and new mother. It showed off her dramatic chops without losing her natural bite. She also kept pushing for better roles. Hollywood kept offering her damsels. She kept saying no. She wasn't interested in weak women. She wanted to play characters who stirred the pot, broke rules, and talked back. At home, she and Gable were wild but solid. Friends said they fought hard, loved harder, and always ended the night laughing. She grounded him. He softened her, just a little. That year, Gable filmed Gone with the Wind and became an even bigger star. Carole cheered him on, but never stepped into his shadow. She wasn't just the woman behind the man. She was the woman who dared him to be better. Hollywood had never seen a couple quite like them, and wouldn't again. Bombshell with a cause. By 1940, Carole Lombard was still Hollywood's screwball queen, but her focus started shifting. Europe was at war. America wasn't in it yet, but tensions were rising. Carole didn't sit back quietly. She was loud, opinionated, and proudly patriotic. While other stars stayed neutral, she made it clear she supported U.S. involvement and she wasn't shy about it. She gave speeches. She signed up for war bond drives. She even mocked isolationists during interviews. It shocked the press, but her fans loved the honesty. She joked that if Hitler ever met her, he'd surrender just to shut me up. It was classic Lombard, funny, bold, and political in the most unexpected way. In 1941, she filmed Mr. and Mrs. Smith, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It was his only screwball comedy, and Carole carried the whole thing. She played a wife who finds out her marriage isn't legal and uses it as an excuse to wreak havoc. It was playful, fast, and full of fire. Her specialty. Hitchcock, known for his control, admitted he mostly stayed out of her way. That same year, she starred in To Be or Not to Be, playing a Polish actress using theater to fight the Nazis. The role hit close to home. It was funny, biting, and fearless, exactly how Carole saw herself in real life. She took the job seriously. She wasn't just there to entertain, she wanted to make a point. Off camera, she kept organizing support for U.S. troops. She pushed Gable to get more involved, too. When the government asked for help selling war bonds, she didn't hesitate. She agreed to headline a national tour, even though it meant leaving Clark and flying cross-country just after the holidays. The bond tour would take her to her home state of Indiana. It was personal. She wanted to prove that even the wildest Hollywood star could serve something bigger than herself. She had no idea it would be the last thing she'd ever do. The crash that changed everything. On January 15, 1942, Carole Lombard stood on stage in Indianapolis and crushed it. She'd just raised over $2 million in war bonds in a single night. The crowd roared. She was exhausted but proud. People begged her to take the train back to California, safer, slower. But she refused. "I want to get home," she said. "We fly." She boarded TWA Flight 3 in Las Vegas with her mother, Elizabeth Peters, and MGM press agent Otto Winkler. The flight took off in the evening. 23 minutes later, it slammed into the side of Mount Potosi, Nevada. Everyone on board died instantly. News broke fast. Gable got the call while still filming. He rushed to the site, climbing the mountain with rescue crews. It was rough terrain, and the wreckage was brutal. They found her wedding ring, her compact, and not much else. He never publicly spoke about what he saw. Carole was 33. The crash stunned the nation. She was the first major American woman to die in connection with the war effort. President Roosevelt sent a personal note calling her a true patriot. The government posthumously honored her with the Medal of Freedom, the only civilian woman to receive it at that point. Hollywood froze. Her last film, To Be or Not to Be, hadn't been released yet. The studio considered shelving it. It was a dark comedy about Nazis, after all, but Gable insisted they release it. "That's what she would have wanted," he said. Clark Gable enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces shortly after. Many said it was his way of coping, of continuing what she started. He served honorably, but he never really recovered. Friends said the light went out in him that day. Chaos in the aftermath. After the crash, the public reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands gathered outside theaters, newsstands, and churches. Fans lit candles. Soldiers wrote her name on bomber planes. The country wasn't just grieving a movie star. They were mourning a national figure who had just raised millions for their future. The Civil Aeronautics Board launched an investigation. Early reports confirmed the plane was off course. The pilot had ignored clear warnings about mountainous terrain. Some blamed outdated maps. Others pointed to pressure to keep to schedule, but none of that changed the outcome. The plane struck Mount Potosi at 8,300 feet. There were no survivors. Clark Gable identified the remains. He took her body home to Forest Lawn Cemetery and had her buried in a white dress she once wore to a film premiere. He placed her favorite perfume in the casket. After that, he disappeared for a while. Studios canceled several of her pending projects. Paramount issued a statement honoring her as one of a kind. Newspapers ran front-page obituaries. One headline simply read, "Carole Lombard dead at 33, a star who burned bright and fast." Back in Indiana, Governor Schricker declared a day of mourning. A war bond campaign was renamed in her honor. Even Roosevelt paused his radio address to mention her. At MGM, production slowed. Her final performance in To Be or Not to Be was released just weeks later. Audiences didn't know how to feel. The film was sharp and funny, but her death made it bittersweet. Some critics called it her best work. Others said it was too painful to watch. Gable changed after that. He joined the military, but those close to him said he lost his fire. He returned to acting years later, but nothing ever felt the same. He never spoke about her death in detail. Carole's absence was loud. Her voice, her energy, her chaos, it all vanished overnight. And Hollywood felt the silence. Nothing left to censor while she was alive. Carole Lombard never needed a script to be outrageous. Even before she was famous, she was known for pranks, curse words, and tearing through Hollywood's ladylike expectations like tissue paper. She once mooned a camera crew as a joke. She told interviewers that acting was 95% horse crap and 5% luck. During a costume fitting, she threw off her robe and said, "What's the point? You've all seen it anyway." Nobody forgot that moment. She crashed rap parties dressed as men, played poker with electricians, and gave as much sass to studio execs as she did to fellow actors. She'd flash a middle finger, light a cigarette, and talk trash with a grin. People either loved her or ducked when she walked in. Censors hated her. She called them the Scissor Squad. She deliberately pushed her lines too far in rehearsals just to see what she could sneak into the final cut. She didn't just toe the line, she tap danced on it. She was also fiercely generous. She paid medical bills for crew members. She slipped money to struggling actresses. She refused to pull rank on set. Her dressing room was always open, and her parties were infamous. Friends said she never changed. Not with fame, not with money, not even after marrying Gable. She stayed raw, loud, and real. She had no interest in being polished. She once told a reporter, "I'm not selling a fantasy, I'm selling me." She didn't care what Hollywood expected. She made her own rules and lived by them until the very end. In a town built on illusion, Carole Lombard was the real deal. Messy, magnetic, and impossible to ignore. She left nothing hidden, nothing filtered, and absolutely nothing to the imagination. Audrey Hepburn wasn't just an actress. She was a phenomenon. In a world filled with icons, she stood apart, enchanting men across generations in a way that no one else ever could. She wasn't the loudest or the boldest, but she left a mark deeper than most. So why did she captivate the hearts of so many, and why does her allure still endure decades later? The timeless beauty. Audrey Hepburn's beauty was like no one else's, and that's exactly what made her unforgettable. While most of the leading ladies of her time were all about bold curves, dramatic looks, and that bombshell vibe, Audrey was different. Her beauty was soft, delicate, and somehow even more captivating. First off, let's talk about those eyes. People called them doe eyes for a reason. They were big, almond-shaped, and full of warmth. Like you could look into them and see kindness, curiosity, and a little bit of mystery all at once. They didn't just look pretty, they expressed everything. Joy, sadness, charm, without her saying a single word. Then, there was her neck, a feature most of us probably don't think much about. Audrey's neck was long and elegant, almost swan-like, which gave her this graceful, regal quality. It was one of those details that made her look poised and refined without even trying. And, of course, there was that smile. Audrey's smile was magic. It had just the right mix of sophistication and playfulness. It wasn't flashy or exaggerated. It was subtle but lit up every room she walked into. Her smile was one of those rare ones that could make you feel like you knew her, even if you were just seeing her on a screen. What really set her apart, though, was how different she looked compared to the Hollywood standard at the time. Back then, bold, curvy women like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell were all the rage. Audrey broke the mold with her slender, almost ballerina-like figure and understated beauty. She didn't need to be loud to stand out. Her elegance and simplicity spoke for her. She proved that beauty didn't always have to scream for attention. Sometimes, it's the quiet, unique details that make the biggest impression. Audrey's figure was almost ballerina-like, graceful, lithe, and impossibly elegant. She didn't need curves to command attention. Her poise and presence spoke louder than any exaggerated features could. She carried herself with a natural sophistication that made her look effortlessly chic in anything she wore, whether it was a simple black dress or capri pants and flats. At a time when glamour often felt over the top, Audrey's style was subtle, clean, and timeless. She made less feel like so much more. Her beauty wasn't just in her figure, it was in her whole approach to how she presented herself. She didn't rely on heavy makeup or flashy fashion to turn heads. Instead, Audrey celebrated simplicity, and somehow that made her even more magnetic. Her short pixie haircut, a daring choice for the era, and minimalist makeup highlighted her natural features, those doe eyes, high cheekbones, and that unforgettable smile. She proved that confidence and elegance could outshine even the boldest looks. But what truly set Audrey apart was the way her beauty reflected her personality. While other actresses leaned into sultry, dramatic personas, Audrey radiated kindness, charm, and warmth. She didn't try to be anyone but herself. In a world obsessed with loudness and curves, Audrey showed that subtlety, grace, and individuality could steal the spotlight. Audrey wasn't just different for the sake of being different. She became a new standard of beauty. She proved that you don't need to fit a mold to be unforgettable. Sometimes being yourself is the most beautiful thing of all. Her incomparable elegance. While other stars relied on extravagance to make a statement, Audrey proved that true style doesn't need to shout. It was her quiet confidence, her natural poise, and her love for simplicity that redefined what it meant to be chic. Her fashion sense was iconic, yet so refreshingly simple. Think about that little black dress in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It became the blueprint for timeless elegance. Audrey knew how to turn basic pieces like capri pants, ballet flats, and tailored shirts into something extraordinary. She didn't follow trends, she created them. And the best part? Her style felt accessible. Women everywhere could look at Audrey and think, I can do that too. There was no need for over-the-top gowns or flashy jewelry. Audrey could make a pair of flats look just as glamorous as a pair of heels. Her signature accessories like oversized sunglasses and pearl earrings were the perfect finishing touch. Classic, understated, and forever in style. But Audrey's elegance wasn't just about clothes, it was how she carried herself. With a background in ballet, she moved with the kind of grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Whether she was walking into a room, dancing on screen, or simply sitting down, every movement had a dancer's fluidity. She never seemed hurried or awkward. Her poise was natural, like it was built into her very DNA. Even when she wasn't trying, Audrey stood out. There was something magnetic about the way she blended simplicity with sophistication. She could be surrounded by the flashiest stars in Hollywood, and yet all eyes would inevitably turn to her. She didn't need sequins or loud colors to shine. Her quiet confidence did that for her. And that's the magic of Audrey Hepburn. Her elegance wasn't something she put on, it was something she was. Her style, her poise, and her effortless grace were a reflection of the beauty she carried on the inside. Simple, timeless, and unforgettable. The soul of an angel. What really set her apart was the kind of person she was on the inside. She had this warmth and genuine kindness that seemed to radiate from her. Men weren't just drawn to her looks. They admired the way she carried herself, how she treated others, and the compassion that shined through in everything she did. First off, Audrey was humble. Think about it. Here was someone who was one of the most famous women in the world, yet she didn't let it go to her head. Even with all the awards, adoration, and paparazzi, she stayed grounded. Audrey wasn't the type to boast or flaunt her success. Instead, she was soft-spoken and approachable. There's this story about how she once apologized to her co-star, William Holden, for feeling nervous during a scene. It's not the kind of thing you expect from a global icon, but that's who she was. Her compassion was just as impressive. Audrey didn't just talk about caring for others, she lived it. After stepping back from Hollywood, she dedicated much of her life to working with UNICEF, traveling to some of the world's most difficult places to help children in need. She wasn't just lending her name to a cause. She was on the ground, meeting people, listening to their stories, and doing everything she could to make a difference. You could tell it wasn't for show. She genuinely cared. That kind of empathy made her beauty even more remarkable. Then there's how her co-stars and friends described her. People always talk about her thoughtfulness. For example, on set, she'd remember small details about people, like what their favorite snack was or if they had a sick family member, and make a point to check in on them. She had this way of making everyone around her feel special and seen, whether they were a big-name director or a production assistant. But what made her most captivating was her quiet confidence. Audrey didn't need to demand attention or dominate a room. She just naturally drew people in with her calm, graceful presence. It's that kind of confidence that's magnetic. It makes you want to know her, be near her, and learn from her. All of these qualities, her humility, compassion, thoughtfulness, and quiet confidence, made Audrey so much more than a pretty face. She was a rare kind of beautiful, the kind that left an impression long after she left the room. Audrey, and her sharp wit. Men admired her not only for her elegance, but also for how effortlessly she combined intelligence and humor. She wasn't just someone you wanted to look at. She was someone you genuinely wanted to listen to. Audrey had this natural ability to hold a conversation that felt both meaningful and engaging. She wasn't one to dominate a room with loudness, but when she spoke, people paid attention. She had a way of expressing herself that was thoughtful and eloquent, yet completely approachable. Whether discussing art, life, or even cracking a light-hearted joke, she made everyone feel comfortable. She wasn't pretentious or overbearing, just effortlessly charming. Her humor, too, was a big part of her appeal. Audrey had this playful, almost cheeky sense of humor that made her even more magnetic. It wasn't forced or over the top. It was subtle and perfectly timed, the kind of humor that left you smiling and wanting to hear more. You can see glimpses of it in her interviews and even in her movies. There's a twinkle in her eye, a lightness to her personality that made her so relatable. What really set her apart was how she balanced everything so gracefully. Audrey was strong and intelligent, but never intimidating. She could be elegant and sophisticated, yet still approachable and warm. It's that rare combination of qualities, being polished without being distant, that made her so captivating. For many men, it wasn't just her beauty or grace that drew them in. It was how she made them feel. She could make anyone feel like the most important person in the room, not by trying to impress them, but simply by being herself. Audrey was proof that intelligence, wit, and kindness are just as alluring as physical beauty. In fact, they're what made her unforgettable. Her amazing voice. Audrey Hepburn's voice was pure magic, soft, melodic, and utterly unforgettable. It wasn't the kind of voice that boomed or demanded attention. Instead, it drew you in, gentle and soothing, like a warm breeze on a quiet afternoon. Her tone carried a natural refinement that felt perfectly in sync with her graceful personality. What made her voice so special was its unique blend of calmness and charm. It wasn't loud or overpowering, but it had this quiet strength that made every word she said feel meaningful. Whether she was delivering lines in a movie or speaking in an interview, there was something mesmerizing about the way she spoke. It felt like she was sharing a little piece of herself, with every word carefully chosen and delivered with care. For men, this voice was captivating because it matched everything else about her. Audrey wasn't about flash or excess. She was about subtlety, elegance, and grace. Her voice carried those same qualities, wrapping her words in a kind of melodic calmness that was impossible to ignore. It was the kind of voice you could imagine hearing in a dream, gentle yet commanding your full attention. And it wasn't just the tone. It was the way she used it. Audrey's voice had a warmth that made you feel instantly at ease, like she was speaking directly to you, even if it was through a movie screen. She could make even the simplest phrases sound poetic, adding layers of meaning with her delicate delivery. Her voice was more than just another part of her charm. It was an extension of who she was. It reflected her elegance, her thoughtfulness, and her ability to captivate without ever trying too hard. Men were drawn to it because it wasn't just pleasant to listen to. It was a voice that lingered, staying with you long after the conversation was over. Her sense of style. As the star that she was, Audrey didn't just wear clothes, she owned them. She wasn't about following trends, she set them. Her style was all about simplicity, but somehow she made it unforgettable. Take that iconic black dress in Breakfast at Tiffany's. On anyone else, it might have just been a nice dress, but on Audrey, it became a symbol of timeless elegance. It wasn't flashy or over the top, but the way she carried herself made it legendary, and it wasn't just on the big screen. Off camera, her style was just as chic. She was a huge fan of clean, tailored lines and classic silhouettes, nothing too fussy or loud. Those cigarette pants and ballet flats she loved? Absolute genius. They were comfortable, practical, and yet they looked impossibly stylish because Audrey wore them with such confidence. What really made her style special, though, was how accessible it felt. She wasn't dripping in jewels or drowning in layers of fabric. Her outfits were simple and elegant, and it made people feel like they could try it too. A little black dress, a crisp white shirt, or a pair of flats. It was all about the way she put it together, effortlessly chic without trying too hard. Audrey's style wasn't just about the clothes, though. It was how she wore them. She carried herself with so much poise and grace that everything looked good on her. Whether she was glammed up for a premiere or casually strolling through Paris, she always looked like she just belonged. And that's what set her apart. She proved that style isn't about showing off. It's about knowing who you are and letting that shine through. Her sense of humor. Hepburn had this low-key, playful sense of humor that made her even more endearing. She wasn't the kind of person cracking loud jokes or trying too hard to be funny. Instead, her humor was light, quick, and full of charm. It was the kind of humor that made people instantly like her. Take, for example, some of her interviews. She had this self-deprecating way of talking about herself that was both funny and completely disarming. Once, when someone asked her about her iconic style, she joked that she was just too lazy to wear anything complicated. It was such a simple line, but it gave everyone a glimpse of how down-to-earth she was. And it made people laugh because she was Audrey Hepburn. The idea of her being lazy about fashion was hilariously impossible. She also loved to poke fun at herself, especially when it came to her looks. Despite being one of the most stunning women in the world, she often joked about her big feet or how skinny she was. It wasn't in a negative way, it was in that I don't take myself too seriously kind of way that made people feel comfortable around her. Even on set, she had this playful energy that kept things light. During the filming of My Fair Lady, for instance, she was known to goof around when the cameras weren't rolling, making funny faces or joking with the crew. She didn't walk around acting like a diva, even though she easily could have. Instead, she brought this approachable humor to everything she did, which made people love her even more. And then there's her comedic timing in movies. Audrey's humor really shined in roles like Roman Holiday and Sabrina. She had this subtle, witty delivery that could make even a simple line feel clever. In Roman Holiday, when she tries to blend in as a normal tourist, her awkward attempts are both hilarious and completely charming. Audrey's humor wasn't just about getting laughs. It was about making people feel at ease. She had this magical ability to be elegant and funny at the same time, which is no easy feat. It's part of what made her so lovable. She was gorgeous and talented, but she didn't take herself too seriously. She knew how to laugh, especially at herself, and that made her all the more irresistible. She had an inner strength. Beneath that delicate appearance was someone who had been through some serious struggles and still came out on top, full of kindness and strength. During World War II, Audrey lived in Nazi-occupied Holland, and it wasn't some distant story for her. She lived through the worst of it. She was just a teenager, but she faced hunger, fear, and heartbreak on a daily basis. Food was so scarce that she had to eat things like tulip bulbs to survive. Imagine that. This future Hollywood icon, this symbol of beauty and glamour, digging into tulip bulbs just to get by. That kind of experience leaves a mark, but instead of becoming bitter, she became more empathetic. She also lost people she loved during the war, which is something that would break most of us, especially at such a young age. But Audrey didn't let it crush her spirit. Instead, she seemed to carry those experiences with a quiet strength. She knew how fragile life was, and it made her appreciate the little things even more. What's even more incredible is how she took that inner strength and used it to shape her career and life. Hollywood is a tough place, but Audrey handled it with grace because she'd already survived worse. When directors or producers wanted her to conform to their idea of what a leading lady should be, she stood her ground. She didn't fit the typical mold of a curvy bombshell, but she turned that into her superpower. She wasn't about to let anyone tell her what beauty should look like. Even later in life, when she became a UNICEF ambassador, you could see that strength shine through. She wasn't just lending her name to a good cause, she was out there in some of the toughest places in the world, helping kids who were going through their own hardships. She understood what it felt like to be vulnerable, and that's why she could connect with people so deeply. Audrey's grace wasn't just about the way she walked or talked. It came from everything she'd been through. She didn't wear her struggles on her sleeve, but they were there, quietly shaping her into the person everyone admired. Her resilience was the kind that didn't need to announce itself. It just radiated from her, making her beauty even more extraordinary. She spoke several languages. Did you know Audrey was fluent in English, Dutch, French, Italian, and Spanish? She wasn't just coasting by with a few phrases. She could genuinely connect with people in their own language. This wasn't just a practical skill for her international stardom. It showed her curiosity and deep appreciation for different cultures. Her multilingual ability came naturally because of her unique upbringing. Born in Belgium, raised in the Netherlands, and later living in England and other parts of Europe, she grew up hearing and speaking different languages. It gave her this worldly, sophisticated vibe that wasn't forced. It was just who she was. And it wasn't just about speaking the words. It was the way she made people feel. Whether she was on set in Rome speaking Italian or addressing fans in Paris in French, she made an effort to communicate in a way that felt personal. That's rare, especially in Hollywood, where many stars stick to their comfort zone. Audrey was all about stepping out of hers to make others feel comfortable. Her fluency also added so much to her screen presence. Think of films like Roman Holiday or Breakfast at Tiffany's. There's this subtle, effortless charm about her that comes from knowing the world isn't one size fits all. Her ability to flow between languages gave her an edge, especially in an era when Hollywood stars often came across as very American-centric. But it wasn't just about the glamour. When she worked with UNICEF later in life, her multilingual talent truly shone. Visiting countries where she could speak to children and their families in their own language added a level of connection that was incredibly powerful. It wasn't about her being a movie star, it was about her genuinely trying to understand and help. Audrey's gift for languages wasn't just a skill, it was a reflection of her open heart and mind. It showed her respect for others, her love of learning, and her ability to step into someone else's world and make them feel seen. That's not just remarkable, it's inspiring. Her magnetic personality. Audrey Hepburn had a kind of presence that was simply magnetic. She didn't rely on grand gestures or loud entrances to turn heads. She didn't have to. Her quiet confidence and graceful demeanor did all the work. It wasn't about demanding attention. It was about naturally drawing people in, making them feel like they were in the presence of someone extraordinary, yet approachable. What set her apart was the way she carried herself. Whether she was on set, at a charity event, or simply walking into a room, Audrey exuded an effortless elegance that wasn't intimidating but inviting. She didn't dominate conversations or steal the spotlight in an overpowering way. Instead, she had this rare ability to make everyone around her feel seen and valued. It was like she had a silent understanding of how to connect with people on a deeper level. Her co-stars often talked about this quality. Gregory Peck once said that Audrey had an enchantment and a radiance that made her unforgettable. Imagine being on a film set filled with Hollywood egos, and here's Audrey, calm, composed, and genuinely interested in others. It wasn't just her looks or talent. It was the way she made people feel like they mattered. Even in her movies, this magnetic presence translated perfectly. Think about Roman Holiday or Sabrina. She didn't play characters who bulldozed their way through life. Instead, her charm came from subtlety and a kind of vulnerability that made her relatable. Audiences weren't just watching a star, they were connecting with someone who felt authentic. When you think of vintage Hollywood stars, you'll probably think of peak entertainment and amazing talents. Back in the day, some of our beloved old Hollywood stars were a bit of a wild card, and they were notorious for some pretty bizarre reasons. From partying too hard, drinking their livers away, or being involved in serious court cases, there is no doubt that some old Hollywood stars did more than star in movies. Bette Davis. Make no mistake, aside from her incredible acting skills and remarkable beauty, Bette Davis was also known for her sharp tongue and intense passion. When most people think of her, they remember her movies and amazing performances, but one thing most people don't realize is that Bette never held back, and people knew it. As a matter of fact, her feuds with co-stars and even studio heads were the stuff of legend. One of her most famous battles was with Joan Crawford. The two had a rivalry that Hollywood still talks about. They were both tough, determined, and deeply competitive. The tension was almost unbearable when they worked together in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Stories from the set claimed they tried to outdo each other in every scene, and it wasn't just acting. At one point, Bette allegedly kicked Joan so hard during a scene that she ended up needing stitches. But her temper wasn't just about clashing with others. It was also part of her fight to be taken seriously as an actress. Bette demanded respect in an industry that didn't always value strong, independent women. She fought against being typecast and even sued Warner Brothers in a bid to escape roles she thought were beneath her. She may not have won that lawsuit, but she set a new standard for actors fighting for creative control. Bette was both loved and feared. Some thought she was too difficult. Others admired her bravery. Either way, she was unforgettable. a real Hollywood legend who refused to play by the rules. Ava Gardner. Born in a small town in North Carolina, Ava had the kind of beauty that could stop traffic, and Hollywood quickly took notice. But Ava was more than a pretty face. She was a bold spirit who didn't care much for Hollywood's prim and proper image. She did what she wanted and with whom she wanted, and she didn't care who talked about it. Her love life was legendary, and the tabloids followed her every move. Ava's romances were as intense as she was, with 3 high-profile marriages that kept the press and her fans guessing. Her first marriage was to Mickey Rooney, who, at the time, was one of the biggest stars around. But it was a rocky start to her love life. They were barely together a year before they split. Next came bandleader Artie Shaw, who was smart and confident, maybe a little too much for Ava. She'd later call him one of the biggest mistakes of my life, and they divorced within a year. But it was her third marriage to Frank Sinatra that really got people talking. Their relationship was intense, dramatic, and all-consuming. They fought hard, loved harder, and became one of Hollywood's most famous couples. Errol Flynn. Born in Tasmania, Flynn made his way to Hollywood and quickly became famous for his roles in adventure films like The Adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. He was handsome, charismatic, and had a flair for the dramatic, making him a favorite among fans. But Errol's off-screen life was like nothing you've ever seen, and far more chaotic. You see, he was known for his extravagant lifestyle, throwing lavish parties that went late into the night. The glitz and glamour attracted all kinds of people, and Flynn was always at the center of it, living life to the fullest. His parties were legendary, filled with beautiful women, music, and plenty of alcohol, drawing the attention of the press and public alike. However, his wild ways often landed him in hot water. Flynn faced numerous scandals throughout his career, with legal troubles that seemed to follow him everywhere. Mae West. She was unafraid to flaunt her sexuality and often used her films to critique the very society that sought to stifle her. When I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
Well, when I'm good, I'm very good. But when I'm bad, I'm better.
She famously quipped, capturing the essence of her scandalous reputation. West's boldness extended beyond her film roles. She was a trailblazer in the fight against censorship, often battling the Hays Code, which sought to impose strict moral guidelines on Hollywood. Her defiance of these restrictions made her a symbol of sexual liberation, and her influence is still felt today in the world of entertainment. However, her notorious lifestyle didn't come without its share of controversies. West was known for her extravagant parties and relationships with several high-profile men, which often became fodder for tabloid gossip. Her unapologetic attitude and larger-than-life personality made her both a beloved star and a figure of scandal in Hollywood. Rita Hworth. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino in 1918, Rita was destined for stardom from a young age. With her striking red hair and captivating smile, she quickly became one of the most sought-after actresses of the 1940s, gracing the silver screen in films like Gilda and The Strawberry Blonde. However, she was married 5 times, and each divorce made waves in the media. Her first marriage was to Edward C. Charles, a young musician, which ended quickly. But it was her marriage to actor Orson Wells that drew the most attention. They were a glamorous couple, but their union was fraught with tension, and their split in 1947 shocked fans. But again, one of the most talked-about aspects of her life was her marriage to Prince Ali Khan, the son of the Aga Khan. Their whirlwind romance captivated the press, but the marriage was rocky from the start. It was marked by tabloid scandals and rumors of infidelity, ultimately leading to their divorce in 1953. The marriage's fallout was especially harsh on Rita, who was deeply in love with the prince. Orson Wells. One of the most infamous moments in Wells's career was the panic caused by his 1938 radio adaptation of War of the Worlds. The broadcast was so convincing that many listeners believed Earth was actually under attack by Martians. This led to widespread panic and outrage, catapulting Wells into the spotlight as both a genius and a provocateur. While the stunt showcased his innovative storytelling, It also earned him a reputation for pushing boundaries without concern for the consequences. Then came Citizen Kane, which was hailed as a cinematic masterpiece but also marked the beginning of Wells's tumultuous relationship with Hollywood studios. His refusal to play by their rules and insistence on creative control angered powerful executives. The film's critical success didn't shield Wells from backlash. Instead, it intensified scrutiny of his methods and motives. He was seen as a threat to the established order, and many studios shunned him for his brashness and demands. Marlene Dietrich. As World War II loomed, Dietrich became increasingly vocal about her political beliefs. She famously renounced her German citizenship in 1939, refusing to support the Nazi regime and its oppressive ideologies. Instead, she became an outspoken advocate for the Allied cause, using her fame to raise morale among troops and promote anti-Nazi sentiments. She toured with the U.S. military, performing for soldiers and delivering a powerful message of resistance against tyranny. Her courageous stance earned her the admiration of many, but also placed her in the crosshairs of controversy, as she faced backlash from those who accused her of betraying her homeland. Dietrich's lifestyle was just as provocative as her political views. She had numerous high-profile affairs, including romances with some of Hollywood's biggest names, such as Gary Cooper and Ernest Hemingway. Her open relationships and free-spirited nature often scandalized the more conservative circles of the time. She embraced herself without shame, defying the traditional roles expected of women in both Hollywood and society at large. Even in her later years, Dietrich remained a controversial figure. She continued to challenge gender norms, often dressing in men's clothing and performing in a way that defied expectations. Her refusal to fade into the background and her relentless pursuit of artistic expression kept her in the public eye. Marlon Brando. His approach to acting was revolutionary. He brought a level of emotional intensity and realism that had never been seen before, but it was his rebellious attitude that truly set him apart. He was known for challenging the established norms of Hollywood, often rejecting the rigid conventions of traditional acting in favor of a more improvisational and instinctive style. However, this fierce independence came at a cost. Brando was notorious for his clashes with directors, refusing to accept authority without question. His relationship with famed director Elia Kazan is just one example. While they collaborated on several acclaimed films, their creative differences often led to tension on set. Brando was known to show up late or refuse to rehearse, causing frustration for those trying to work with him. His unpredictable behavior and strong-willed nature earned him a reputation as difficult, but it also garnered him respect as an artist unwilling to compromise his vision. Joan Crawford. It was her intense personality that often overshadowed her achievements. She was known for her high expectations, both for herself and those around her, leading to a reputation for being difficult to work with. Her perfectionism on set sometimes resulted in clashes with directors and co-stars, making her a controversial figure in Hollywood. But perhaps the most notorious aspect of Crawford's life was her fraught relationship with her daughter, Christina. The two were often at odds, and their strained connection was exacerbated by Crawford's relentless drive for success and control. After Crawford's death in 1977, Christina published a tell-all memoir titled Mommy Dearest, which exposed the darker side of their relationship. In it, she detailed the abuse and strict discipline she endured at the hands of her mother, painting Crawford in a harsh light and forever altering the public's perception of the star. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Known for her extravagant taste and love for luxury, Gabor's lifestyle was filled with lavish parties, opulent homes, and designer gowns. She often flaunted her wealth, showcasing her love for the finer things in life, from jewelry to lavish vacations. Her public appearances were marked by her stunning looks and dramatic flair, and she never missed an opportunity to make a statement, whether it was her fashion choices or her witty, sometimes outrageous remarks. Despite her glamorous exterior, Gabor's life was not without its controversies. She was often involved in legal disputes, including a notorious incident in 2005 when she was arrested for hitting a police officer with her car. This scandal only added to her reputation as a woman who lived by her own rules, unafraid of the consequences. In addition to her personal life, Gabor's career included numerous film and television roles, but her true talent lay in her ability to captivate the public's imagination. She was a master of self-promotion and embraced her identity as a celebrity, often playing up her image as a glamorous diva. Hedi Lamar. What makes Lamar truly notorious is her extraordinary contributions to science and technology. During World War II, she co-invented a frequency-hopping spread spectrum technology that was initially intended to help the Allied forces by preventing enemy jamming of torpedo guidance systems. While her invention was not immediately recognized, it laid the groundwork for modern wireless communication, including Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Despite her significant contributions, Lamar's genius often went unacknowledged during her lifetime, overshadowed by her Hollywood persona. Her life was also marked by a series of relationships and scandals that kept her in the headlines. Lamar was married 6 times, and her personal life was filled with drama, including high-profile divorces and romantic entanglements. She was known for her fiery spirit and independence, which sometimes led to conflicts with her partners and Hollywood insiders. Anne Sheridan. Her reputation as the oomph girl was no accident. She was fully aware of the power of her allure. She embraced her sex appeal, often playing strong female characters who were confident in their own skin. This combination of beauty and strength made her a trailblazer in an era when women were often relegated to stereotypical roles. She was known for her quick wit and no-nonsense attitude, which set her apart from many of her contemporaries. But it was her frankness about the industry that made Sheridan particularly notorious. She was unafraid to speak her mind, often criticizing the Hollywood system and the treatment of actresses. In an era when many women were expected to remain silent about their experiences, Sheridan broke the mold, openly discussing the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated industry. Her candidness garnered both admiration and controversy, as she navigated the often treacherous waters of fame with a bold and unapologetic attitude. Sheridan's love life was as colorful as her career. She had several high-profile romances, but her brief marriage to actor George Brent is one of the most talked-about chapters of her personal life. Their marriage, which lasted less than a year, was filled with passionate highs and dramatic lows, reflecting the tumultuous nature of Hollywood relationships at the time. Sheridan's romantic escapades often made headlines. Jack Lemmon. Despite his wholesome image, Lemmon was known for enjoying a drink, and his relationship with alcohol was tumultuous. He became notorious for his party lifestyle, often seen in Hollywood social circles where drinking was a common theme. Friends and colleagues knew Lemmon for his ability to hold his liquor, but there were times when his drinking spiraled out of control. He openly battled with alcoholism, a struggle that affected his relationships and career. Lemmon's notoriety was heightened by his ability to channel his personal challenges into his performances. He portrayed characters who often grappled with their own vices, allowing him to bring authenticity to roles that mirrored his real-life struggles. This connection between his life and art made him relatable to audiences, who saw a glimpse of the man behind the charming smile. His candidness about his battles with alcohol made headlines and revealed a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with his public persona. Lemmon spoke openly about the impact of his drinking on his family and career, acknowledging the challenges it posed. Debbie Reynolds. Married to singer Eddie Fisher, Reynolds was living the dream, until Fisher's infamous affair with Elizabeth Taylor shattered that illusion. The public scandal rocked Hollywood and turned Reynolds' life upside down. The heartbreak was magnified by the intense media scrutiny that followed, making her not just a victim of circumstance but also a figure of pity and sympathy for many fans. The fallout from the divorce became a media spectacle, overshadowing her impressive career, which included memorable performances in films like Singin' in the Rain and The Unsinkable Molly Brown. Despite the turmoil, Reynolds maintained a resilient spirit, often charming audiences with her ability to bounce back from adversity. The drama of her personal life contrasted sharply with her on-screen persona, leaving audiences captivated by her resilience and grace. While her career showcased her talent and versatility, it was the very public pain of her marriage's collapse that made her a notorious figure in Hollywood. Lana Turner. In 1958, Turner's life took a shocking twist when Stompanato was found dead in her home, stabbed by her daughter, Cheryl Crane. The murder trial that followed was sensational, drawing intense media attention and public scrutiny. The details of the case, including the tumultuous nature of Turner's relationship with Stompanato, captivated the nation and painted a portrait of a star whose glamorous exterior masked a life filled with drama and chaos. Johnny Stompanato. He was known for his fierce temperament and his infamous ties to organized crime. As an enforcer for the notorious Los Angeles mobster Mickey Cohen, Stompanato embodied the dangerous allure of the gangster lifestyle that permeated the Hollywood scene in the 1950s. He had a reputation for being volatile and violent, traits that made him both feared and respected in the underworld. However, it was his tumultuous relationship with actress Lana Turner that thrust him into the spotlight and made him a household name. Their affair was passionate and fraught with drama, drawing intense media attention. Turner, a glamorous star with a career marked by iconic films, found herself entangled with a man whose violent tendencies posed significant risks. The public was fascinated by their relationship, which seemed to oscillate between romance and danger. The story took a tragic turn in April 1958 when Stompanato was fatally stabbed in Turner's home by her teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane. George Raft. It's said that Raft often mingled with gangsters and was known to attend their lavish parties, blurring the lines between his on-screen roles and his off-screen life. This connection to the criminal underworld not only enhanced his tough guy image, but also fueled speculation about whether he was living out a script of his own in the dangerous streets of Los Angeles. His Hollywood persona and his ties to gangsters intertwined in ways that captivated the public. Stories circulated about Raft being approached by mobsters for favors or to finance their schemes, leading many to question whether he was just acting or if he was a player in the real-life drama of organized crime. While Raft often denied any wrongdoing or deep involvement with the mob, the whispers and rumors never truly faded. Sharon Tate. Her radiant smile and captivating presence captivated audiences, and she seemed poised for a bright future in the film industry. However, Tate's life took a tragic and notorious turn that would forever change the landscape of Hollywood. In August 1969, her life was brutally taken by members of the Manson family, a cult led by Charles Manson. At just 26 years old, Tate was 8 months pregnant at the time of her death, which made the tragedy even more heart-wrenching. The horror of the crime sent shockwaves across the nation and became emblematic of the dark side of the counterculture movement of the 1960s. The brutality of this all, alongside the shocking nature of the Manson family's actions, turned Tate into a symbol of innocence lost and the chaos that gripped society during that turbulent period. The media frenzy surrounding the case brought her name back into the spotlight, but in a way that overshadowed her career and achievements. What could have been a brilliant trajectory as an actress became a sad tale. Jane Mansfield. She starred in films like The Girl Can't Help It and Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, where she showcased both her comedic talent and her undeniable charm. However, Mansfield's life was equally notorious due to a series of dramatic relationships and a flair for the outrageous. She was known for her high-profile romances, including a marriage to actor Mickey Hargitay, with whom she had 3 children. Their passionate yet horrible relationship was often the subject of tabloid gossip, but it was Mansfield's extravagant lifestyle and penchant for the spotlight that truly made her infamous. Mansfield loved to be in the public eye, often wearing revealing outfits that left little to the imagination. Her larger-than-life personality was complemented by her love for throwing lavish parties and making headlines with her eye-catching antics. She even famously posed with the likes of the then-famous playboy Hugh Hefner, solidifying her status as a symbol of the glamorous yet often scandalous lifestyle of Hollywood's elite. The notoriety of her life was punctuated by her tragic death in a car accident in 1967, which shocked the nation and added to her legend. Mansfield was just 34 when she died, and the circumstances surrounding the accident, where she was riding in a car with her boyfriend and 3 of her children, only heightened the public's fascination with her life. Tallulah Bankhead. She was known to throw wild parties that often spilled over into all-night affairs, filled with laughter, music, and an excess of alcohol. Her heavy drinking was legendary, and she openly embraced a lifestyle that would shock the conservative society of her time. Whether she was making headlines for her relationships with prominent men in Hollywood or her romantic entanglements with women, Bankhead lived life on her own terms, often disregarding the judgment of others. Her defiance didn't stop at her personal life. She was a vocal advocate for the rights of women and the LGBTQ+ community at a time when such topics were largely taboo. Bankhead's candidness about her sexuality and her relationships challenged the status quo and made her a beloved figure among those who sought to break free from societal constraints. How much of classic Hollywood films do you know? Well, some facts are common knowledge, but others, the producers tried to hide as best as they can but failed. From manipulating colors to terrible film mistakes, these random classic film facts are oddly intriguing. The curtains in Gone with the Wind. Remember Scarlett O'Hara's famous green curtains in Gone with the Wind? Well, turns out those curtains weren't even green. Back when they were filming Gone with the Wind, the Technicolor process didn't capture green very well. It looked strange or washed out on screen. So, instead of green fabric, the costume designers went with gray. It sounds funny, but on film, that gray gave the illusion of a rich green color without any technical issues. It's one of those clever movie tricks that most people never even realize, but it totally shaped the look of that iconic scene. But when it comes to iconic scenes, you'd be shocked at what the great Alfred Hitchcock has to say about his favorite appearance. Alfred Hitchcock's favorite cameo. If you know anything about Hitchcock, aside from the fact that he was such a filmmaking genius, he was also famous for his cameos. In nearly all of his movies, he'd pop up for a few seconds, maybe walking a dog, reading a newspaper, or just blending into a crowd. But here's the twist. His favorite cameo moment wasn't even his own. Instead, Hitchcock claimed he admired Cary Grant's walk in North by Northwest, 1959, more than anything he'd done himself. He thought the way Grant moved in the film looked incredibly Hitchcockian. Somehow, Grant captured the mysterious, slightly unsettling vibe that Hitchcock loved to create. It's like Grant's stride became a cameo for Hitchcock's whole style, without the director even being on screen. It appears some movies are just so great, even the actors like to take a piece home, like this next actor, Bela Lugosi in his cape. Did you know that even off-screen, Bela couldn't seem to let go of Dracula? After his iconic role as the vampire, Lugosi became so attached to the character that he actually wore his Dracula cape just about everywhere. He'd show up at parties, events, and even in his own home draped in that same black cloak as if he were still in character. He was so tied to the role that he even requested to be buried in his cape when he passed away. Did you know in some other movies they manipulate a lot of things to give us certain legendary images, like this next one? The Wizard of Oz slippers. Dorothy's ruby slippers in The Wizard of Oz weren't always meant to be red. In the original book by L. Frank Baum, her shoes were actually silver. But when MGM started working on the film, they realized they could use the new Technicolor technology to make the visuals pop. Red was more eye-catching on screen than silver, so they made a bold choice and changed Dorothy's shoes to ruby red. It was a simple color switch that created one of the most iconic props in movie history. As far as Hollywood history is concerned, on-screen romances were often real, all except these two. Vivien Leigh kissing Clark Gable. From the viewer's perspective, there was no denying the chemistry between the two on-screen lovebirds, but the reality is a bit more shocking. Even though Vivien Leigh might have looked smitten with Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind behind the scenes, she wasn't exactly thrilled about their kissing scenes. In fact, she reportedly complained about Gable's breath, saying it was pretty bad, and all because of his dentures. You see, Gable had dental issues and wore false teeth, which didn't exactly make those romantic moments easy for Leigh. Remember how they manipulate movies to produce curated content? Well, this next one takes the cake. Marilyn Monroe's iconic white dress. In The 7-Year Itch-Alley, the iconic white dress donned by Marilyn Monroe wasn't actually white. While it looks perfectly white on screen, the filmmakers had to work around the limitations of the lighting and cameras of the time. Pure white would have been too bright and would have overexposed, so they chose a slightly cream-colored fabric instead. This way, the dress wouldn't look too washed out under the intense studio lights, and it still gave that classic dazzling effect on screen. It's a small detail, but one that made a big difference in creating that unforgettable scene. Speaking of unforgettable scenes, this next actor seemed very forgetful on set. Marlon Brando couldn't memorize lines. In The Godfather, Marlon Brando famously used cue cards, which were hidden all over the set. In some scenes, his lines were even taped to the actors' foreheads so he could read them while looking at them. Brando believed that not memorizing his lines made his performance feel more spontaneous and natural. It's a funny trick that helped him bring the unforgettable character of Vito Corleone to life, without having to rely on his memory. What is your memory of the film, My Fair Lady? Probably the amazing singing, right? Well, this would burst your bubble. The singing in My Fair Lady. Audrey Hepburn may have looked and acted the part of Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady, 1964, but when it came to the singing, that wasn't actually her voice. Most of the vocals were dubbed by Marni Nixon, a talented singer who did a lot of behind-the-scenes work for Hollywood stars. Hepburn worked hard and practiced the songs for months, but the studio ultimately decided Nixon's voice fit the role better. Hepburn was disappointed, but she put her heart into acting, and together they created a performance that's still beloved today. For some films, it's all fake performance, but this next scene took being realistic to the next level. The horse's head scene from Godfather. In this chilling scene, the character of Jack Woltz, a Hollywood producer, wakes up to find the severed head of his prized racehorse placed in his bed as a warning from the mafia. Now most people may have concluded that the horse's head in that scene was fake, but believe it or not, it wasn't fake. It was real. The production used an actual horse's head, which they acquired from a dog food company. The crew made sure the head was fresh and lifelike, and it was so realistic that actor John Marley, who played the character receiving it in his bed, was genuinely horrified. The scene is shocking enough as it is, but knowing it was a real horse's head makes it even more unsettling. What's even more unsettling when fans learn about it is this next part. The piano in Casablanca. Remember that piano where Sam plays As Time Goes By? Well, it wasn't just an ordinary prop. It's become almost as iconic as the movie itself. But here's the thing. There wasn't just one piano used in the film. In fact, the famous piano that Sam plays in Rick's Cafe was sold multiple times over the years, often being touted as the only Casablanca piano. However, there were actually several pianos used during the filming, and the one that ended up being sold at auction wasn't even the original. It's a fun fact that adds a little mystery to the film's history. Just how many real pianos did the movie really have? Well, hopefully, no one stole any, which is more than can be said for the props in this next movie. Charlton Heston stealing the 10 Commandments. Known for his towering performances in films like The 10 Commandments, 1956, Charlton Heston apparently couldn't resist taking home a piece of the action. After filming, he actually took one of the 10 Commandments tablets as a souvenir. Heston, who played Moses in the epic film, reportedly loved the idea of keeping a relic from such an iconic movie, and the tablet became a bit of a personal memento. But sometimes personal mementos can become public property just like this. Red jacket in Rebel Without a Cause. James Dean's famous red jacket in Rebel Without a Cause 1955, became almost as iconic as the actor himself. But here's the twist. After the film was done, the jacket didn't just sit in a costume department. It was reused in other teen movies of the 1950s and 60s. Studios loved the idea of reusing such a recognizable piece of clothing to save money, and the jacket showed up in various films, becoming a kind of recycled symbol of rebellious youth. It's one thing for an object to be recycled. This actor had his face transformed and recycled for our viewing pleasure. Frankenstein's makeup. Boris Karloff's monster, Frankenstein, 1931, is one of the most terrifying characters in film history, but what's even scarier is how the makeup was created. Karloff had to endure hours of makeup application to transform into the monster, but it wasn't just time-consuming, it was also incredibly uncomfortable. The famous flat-top head was made from layers of plaster and rubber, and Karloff had to be sewn into his costume every day. The heavy, tight makeup and costume often made him faint from exhaustion, and he couldn't even drink water during filming because the makeup was so delicate. Despite the grueling process, Karloff's dedication to the role made the character unforgettable. Now, actors are not the only ones with dedication. Some directors and producers hold their own and are super creative too. The shower scene in Psycho. In Psycho, 1960, Alfred Hitchcock pulled off one of the most iconic scenes in horror history, the shower scene that took a bloody turn. But the blood you see in that scene isn't actually blood at all. Since the film was shot in black and white, Hitchcock used Hershey's chocolate syrup instead. The syrup was the perfect consistency to mimic blood, and its dark, rich color looked realistic on camera. It's a clever little trick that helped make the infamous shower scene so unsettling, and it's hard to watch it today without thinking about the sweet ingredient behind such a terrifying moment. For this next actress, the Ingrid-net of her appeal was so obvious to all. Betta Grable's iconic legs. Her legs were her signature feature, and she knew just how valuable they were. In fact, she had them insured for a whopping $1 million, a move that was practically unheard of at the time. Gable was one of the most popular stars of the 1940s, and her legs were considered one of her most iconic attributes, often showcased in her pin-up photos and films. The insurance policy was a publicity stunt, but it also helped cement her as one of Hollywood's most marketable stars. Famous or not, some movies can just slip up in the worst way, like this one. Chariot race in Ben-Hur. It's so astonishing to see horrible film mistakes in an otherwise legendary film, and Ben-Hur is one of them. In the film, there's a famous chariot race that remains one of the most thrilling scenes in movie history. But what's interesting is that a stray Coca-Cola bottle can be spotted in the background during the race. This slip-up has been a fun piece of trivia for fans of the film. Despite the movie's epic scale and historical setting, a modern-day bottle made its way onto the set, probably unnoticed during filming. It's a quirky reminder that even in the most serious and grandiose films, mistakes can sometimes slip through the cracks. From slipping mistakes, this next one had actors slipping into unconsciousness. Flying monkey masks from Wizard of Oz. The iconic flying monkeys were not just a creepy part of the fantasy world of Wizard of Oz. They had a rather unsettling real-world detail. The masks the actors wore for their roles as the flying monkeys were so uncomfortable and hot that many of the actors would faint during the filming. Some of the performers even had to be helped off the set because they couldn't see through the masks and struggled to breathe. Despite the discomfort, those flying monkeys went on to become one of the most terrifying parts of the film, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the Wicked Witch's army. The fake shark in Jaws. The film's iconic shark, Bruce, wasn't exactly the smoothest operator. The mechanical shark frequently malfunctioned during filming, causing a lot of frustration for director Steven Spielberg and his crew. In fact, the shark broke down so often that Spielberg had to get creative. Instead of showing the shark constantly, he used suspense and sound to build tension, making the audience fear the shark before they even saw it. This decision ended up being one of the film's greatest strengths, and it helped Jaws become the thrilling classic we know today. Sometimes a mistake in Hollywood can lead to something even better. King Kong's roar. The terrifying roar of King Kong in the 1933 film King Kong wasn't created by a lion, as many people believe. Instead, the iconic sound was a mix of various animal noises. The filmmakers combined the roars of a lion, tiger, and elephant, then added a touch of a hawk's cry to make it sound even more menacing. The result was a unique and unforgettable roar that helped establish King Kong as one of cinema's most fearsome creatures. It's a clever example of how sound design, using different elements together, can create something larger than life. Stray cat in Godfather. The cat that Marlon Brando holds in the famous opening scene wasn't part of the script at all. It was just a stray that wandered onto the set during filming. Brando, being the improviser he was, decided to pick it up and include it in the scene. The cat's calm and unbothered demeanor added a surprising contrast to the tense, dramatic moment, giving Vito Corleone an unexpected air of control and serenity. It's a great example of how spontaneity can enhance a scene, turning an unplanned moment into an iconic one. Titanic set in A Night to Remember. In the 1958 film A Night to Remember, which depicts the tragic sinking of the Titanic, the filmmakers used a real-life ocean liner to create the look of the ill-fated ship. The ship in question wasn't the Titanic, of course, but the RMS Caronia, a vessel that closely resembled the Titanic in both appearance and scale. The filmmakers even used real footage of the Caronia for several scenes, making the ship's portrayal in the film feel remarkably authentic. While the Caronia wasn't the Titanic, it still provided a sense of realism that added to the gravity of the story. The decision to incorporate real ship footage helped to enhance the film's impact, showing the grandeur of ocean liners from that era. It's a great example of how filmmakers from earlier decades used practical solutions to create stunning visuals and immerse audiences in the story, even before the age of CGI and modern special effects. Hidden message in Rear Window. If you take a close look at the windows of the building across from James Stewart's apartment in Rear Window, 1954, you'll notice something cool. There's a sign that says Hitchcock was here. It's a little hidden Easter egg, and it's one of Alfred Hitchcock's playful ways of leaving his mark on the film. Known for his love of cameos and subtle details, Hitchcock included this sneaky signature in the set as a fun, personal touch, and it's just one of those little things that makes watching his movies even more enjoyable for those who spot it. Cat in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Holly Golightly's cat in the movie doesn't have a name, which is actually kind of fitting for her character. Audrey Hepburn's character simply calls it Cat throughout the film. It's one of those little things that says a lot about who Holly is. She's this free-spirited, unpredictable woman who doesn't want to be tied down by anything, and that includes giving the cat a proper name. In a way, the nameless cat becomes a symbol of her own loneliness. Holly is always surrounded by people but is emotionally distant, much like the cat. It's a subtle yet powerful touch that helps us understand Holly's character even more, and over the years the cat has become just as iconic as Hepburn's own portrayal of the character. It's funny how such a small detail can leave such a lasting impression. Betty White in The Proposal. If you remember her cameo from The Proposal, you may be shocked to learn it wasn't something that was planned from the start. Originally, the role she plays wasn't even meant for her. The part was intended for a different actress, but after the filmmakers saw Betty White in another film, they realized she'd be perfect for the role. They quickly made the change, and it turned out to be a fantastic decision. Her performance in The Proposal ended up being one of her most memorable comedic moments in modern Hollywood. She brought her signature humor and charm, turning what could have been just a small role into one of the standout moments of the movie. It's a great example of how sometimes the right person for a role is found unexpectedly, and in Betty's case, it gave audiences another reason to fall in love with her legendary comedic timing. The Vertigo Dress. The iconic green dress Kim Novak wears in Vertigo, 1958, wasn't just a random costume. It was actually custom-made just for her. Alfred Hitchcock, known for his meticulous attention to detail, was very specific about how he wanted the dress to look. He even insisted on a special shade of green, one that would perfectly match the film's eerie, mysterious tone. This dress is featured in one of the most pivotal scenes in the movie, when Novak's character, Judy, undergoes a dramatic transformation. The green color itself plays a symbolic role, reflecting the themes of obsession and the uncanny that run throughout the film. It's a perfect example of Hitchcock's genius in using every detail, from costumes to colors, to deepen the atmosphere and enhance the story. Fake snow in White Christmas. The snow in the famous White Christmas number wasn't real at all. Instead, it was made from a mixture of soap flakes and other materials designed to look like snow on screen. The filmmakers had to get creative since real snow wouldn't work for filming indoors, especially under the bright studio lights. However, the fake snow had a bit of a problem. It was so light that it often got stuck in the performers' costumes. Between takes, the actors would have to be brushed off to get rid of the snow that clung to them. It's a small behind-the-scenes detail, but it shows how making something look perfect on camera often comes with unexpected challenges. Dog-paid actor in Wizard of Oz. Here's an interesting fact of the movie. The dog playing Toto was actually paid more than the Munchkin actors. Toto, the adorable terrier, earned $125 a week for his role, while the Munchkin actors were paid only $50 a week. It's one of those oddities in film history that highlights how animal stars were sometimes treated more lavishly than human actors. While it may seem surprising today, it was a reflection of how Hollywood viewed animals as major assets to a production. Plus, Toto's role was pretty significant in the film, so maybe it makes sense he earned a little extra. Skull Island set in King Kong. The lush, mysterious Skull Island in King Kong, 1933, might look like a real, exotic location, but in reality, it was just a set. The jungle scenes were filmed on a soundstage, complete with painted backdrops and carefully crafted sets designed to give the illusion of a vast, untamed island. It's one of the early examples of movie magic, showing how filmmakers were able to create expansive and immersive worlds without the need for actual locations. Even though the island wasn't real, the way it was brought to life helped make King Kong one of the most iconic films of its time. The Kid set. Charlie Chaplin's iconic set for the orphanage was built in just one day. Chaplin and his crew worked tirelessly around the clock to put everything together quickly. Despite the rush, the result was one of the most memorable and beloved locations in silent film history. The set became such a crucial part of the film, helping to create the emotional depth and sense of struggle that Chaplin's character, along with the little boy, experienced. It's a great example of how Chaplin's dedication and resourcefulness made a lasting impact on filmmaking, even when working under tight deadlines. Betty's incredible style in All About Eve. Some of Bette Davis's character Margot Channing's outfits were actually pieces from Davis's own personal wardrobe. Costume designer William Travilla was so taken with her unique and elegant style that he decided to incorporate her real clothes into the film. This gave Margot's character even more authenticity and depth, as the clothing felt more true to who she was as a person. It's a fascinating detail, showing how Davis's personal style helped shape the role and made Margot Channing one of the most iconic characters in classic Hollywood. Back when TV antennas needed a prayer and a good whack to work, boomers ruled the remote, if you could even call it that. From laugh tracks louder than your dad's snoring to cliffhangers that had people genuinely yelling at their screens, classic TV wasn't just a pastime, it was a whole personality. But can Gen Z even handle the suspense of waiting a whole week for the next episode? Spoiler alert, not likely. Captain Kangaroo. Do you remember those early mornings with Captain Kangaroo? Of course, how could you forget? His calm, gentle voice felt like a warm hug.
It's definitely not a bored, nothing-to-do day. It's a get-out-and-get-going day.
Welcoming kids into the day. Much unlike what we have today, it was not some loud cartoon with crazy action, just simple, comforting stories and friendly chats. Oh, and remember the characters? Mr. Green Jeans and Bunny Rabbit. Captain Kangaroo had this magical way of making you feel like you were in the room with him, and every kid knew it was time to sit back, relax, and let Captain take over. Let's face it, we may never get anything quite like that anymore. When you remember it, it'll make you want to whistle in nostalgia, but not as much as this next memory.
I love you all. You too. And you too. And me too.
Andy Griffith's whistling theme song. That whistling theme used to send shivers down the spine, didn't it? As soon as it started, you could almost picture Andy and Opie walking hand in hand down a dirt path, fishing poles over their shoulders, off to some peaceful spot by the water. The tune was not only catchy, it captured everything the show was about: simplicity, family, and the warmth of small-town life. It may have been lighthearted, but it's hard to forget. It instantly transported you to a world where the biggest problems could be solved with a friendly chat or a trip to the local diner. Once you heard it, it was like a promise that for the next 30 minutes, all was right with the world. But not as right as Saturday mornings with your favorite cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons! How was it for you? Just you, a big bowl of cereal, and the TV all to yourself. The Flintstones kicked things off with that prehistoric humor. Fred and Barney were like old friends getting into trouble. Then came Scooby-Doo, where you and the gang solved mysteries together, always wondering who was really behind the mask. And the Jetsons. That was a glimpse of the future we all thought we'd have by now, with flying cars and robot helpers. Well, maybe we're getting close anyways. But those mornings weren't just about watching cartoons, they were a ritual. No streaming or reruns, just that one time a week to catch your favorite characters. It was like a mini escape, and every boomer remembers those moments like they were yesterday. Dragnet's deadpan delivery. Now remember this? Sergeant Joe Friday had that deadpan style that was all business. Just the facts, ma'am. No fluff, no nonsense. He wasn't about flashy gadgets or over-the-top action. He was all about keeping it steady, sticking to the facts, and letting the clues speak for themselves. If you're a boomer, there was something so refreshing about his straightforward grit. And the catchphrase would always make you smile like you're probably doing right now. It was definitely not just a phrase. You knew exactly what you were getting with Joe Friday. A guy who didn't mess around, just solved the case one fact at a time. Mr. Rourke on Fantasy Island. Remember Mr. Rourke, played by Ricardo Montalban? Every episode kicked off with Tattoo calling out, "The plane, the plane," signaling that new guests and new mysteries were about to land. It was exciting. Mr. Rourke was the ultimate host, always calm, classy, and just mysterious enough to make you wonder what he knew that no one else did. Each guest's adventure was unpredictable, with dreams turning into unexpected lessons, and Rourke was right there, guiding things with that smooth, knowing smile. It was TV magic that made us think twice about what we really wished for. Good night, John Boy on the Waltons. Who can forget that iconic "Good night, John Boy" from the Waltons? It started out as a line, but it turned into a sweet little ritual. You'd see each family member say goodnight, and it always felt so genuine. It made you feel like you were right there with them, part of their close-knit family. For us boomers, it hit home, right? It reminded us of our own family routines, gathering around the table for dinner, sharing the highs and lows of the day, and then winding down together. Each good night felt like a cozy hug, reinforcing those bonds of love and support we all cherish. In the end, the Waltons gave us a peek into a world where family truly mattered. When they tucked in John Boy with that simple phrase, it was like they were tucking us in too, making us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Honestly, who wouldn't want to be part of that loving crew? It's those little moments that stick with us. The line from Saturday Night Live.
It's Saturday Night Live!
Live from New York, it's Saturday night. That iconic line kicked off Saturday Night Live and instantly set the stage for a night of laughs. It was the ultimate weekend tradition. You'd gather around the TV knowing you were in for something fresh and hilarious, whether it was a spot-on parody or a ridiculous skit. The energy was electric, and the show became a launching pad for some of the biggest names in comedy. Who could forget the wild antics of the not-ready-for-prime-time players? They pushed boundaries and tackled everything from politics to pop culture, making us laugh while making us think. SNL was more than just a show. It was a cultural phenomenon. It shaped the way we saw comedy and brought the week's news right into our living rooms in a way that was both funny and relatable. Those late-night laughs became a staple in our lives, and even today that opening line brings back a flood of nostalgic memories. Carol Burnett's hilarious costumes and skits. She had us in stitches, especially with that classic Gone with the Wind curtain rod dress. And those The Family skits? Carol Burnett and her cast brought those characters to life in a way that felt both hilarious and real, turning family squabbles into comedy gold. Only boomers remember that The Carol Burnett Show was a must-watch. Along with Tim Conway, Harvey Korman, and Vicki Lawrence, the show made every episode feel like a comedy masterclass. They broke character, cracked each other up, and let us laugh right along with them. In the end, it was more than just a performance or just a show for laughs. Somehow, the show made us feel like part of the fun. There is no doubt that her show was one of the true highlights of TV comedy. They don't make them like that anymore. Charlie's Angels.
Once upon a time, there were 3 little girls who went to the police academy.
Who could forget Charlie's Angels and their iconic feathered hair? Those ladies brought style and fierceness to detective work like never before. Farrah Fawcett, Jaclyn Smith, and Kate Jackson weren't just solving crimes. They were doing it with confidence and a killer fashion sense. Charlie's Angels was a game changer. The Angels had brains, beauty, and serious attitude, breaking the mold of what female characters could be on TV. Each week, they took down the bad guys with grace, smarts, and that unforgettable 70s style. They made every case look like an adventure and made us all wish we could rock feathered hair just as well. Batman Dynamic Duo. If you're a fan of Batman, you'd surely remember the days of Adam West and Burt Ward. They turned Gotham City into a campy, colorful adventure, battling villains with that over-the-top style that was just plain fun. With every pow and bam splashed across the screen, they brought comic book action to life in a way we hadn't seen before. Adam West's straight-faced Batman and Burt Ward's wide-eyed Robin were a perfect pair, giving us thrills and laughs in equal measure. If you read the comics, you'd find that they embodied the characters so well, it was pure escapism to watch them. Tuning in to watch the dynamic duo take down the bad guys with crazy gadgets, corny lines, and a wink to the audience is something that can't be forgotten in a hurry. Matt Dillon from Gunsmoke. He was the ultimate Old West Marshal in Gunsmoke, wasn't he? Every week he kept Dodge City in line with a steady hand and a serious sense of justice. For us boomers, Dillon was the real deal, tough, fair, and always ready to stand up to outlaws, no matter the odds. Played by the legendary James Arness, Dillon wasn't just another cowboy. He brought depth to the role, showing a lawman with grit, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to his town. Watching him on Gunsmoke felt like stepping into the Old West, where good and bad were clear-cut, and the hero always fought to keep peace in Dodge City. It was classic Western TV at its best. Edith and Archie Bunker's duet. Never before has there been such an amazing duet right before an episode plays. Archie and Edith Bunker's duet, Those Were the Days, which kicked off All in the Family, was so wonderful to listen to. Archie's gruff voice and Edith's high-pitched warble were perfectly mismatched, but that was part of the charm. For all of those who know, that song was more than just a theme. It reminds us of simpler times back when life felt less complicated and everyone seemed to know their place in the world. The duet would set the tone for each episode, playful yet honest. Right before Archie took on whatever hot-button issue was on his mind, All in the Family didn't just make us laugh, it made us think, all while keeping us grounded in the Bunker's quirky, imperfect, and oh-so-relatable family life. Red Skelton's characters. From the lovable goof, Clem Cadiddlehopper, to the hobo with a heart, Freddie the freeloader, Skelton's cast of characters brought joy to families everywhere. He had this rare gift for making each character feel relatable and unique, filling every sketch with warmth and humor. Skelton could crack you up with a simple look or gesture, and his comedy was clean, clever, and perfect for all ages. Watching him was like a masterclass in comedy, and for boomers, those characters still bring back warm memories of family laughter. Live long and prosper greeting on Star Trek.
Live long and prosper.
That Vulcan greeting, paired with his famous split-fingered salute, is one of those phrases that instantly takes us back. Spock's iconic catchphrase was a profound sentiment, carrying the spirit of hope and goodwill. To all those who know, Spock was far from just a mere character. He was the voice of reason in a universe full of chaos. With his logical mind and calm demeanor, he navigated intergalactic conflicts and philosophical dilemmas, reminding us that there's value in logic and understanding. Every time he said, "Live long and prosper," it felt like he was sharing a universal wish for peace and longevity, not just for himself, but for everyone. The Fonz's thumbs up. Let's talk about the Fonz from Happy Days. He was the coolest character on the show, always dressed in his leather jacket and exuding charm. His signature move? That iconic thumbs up. Whenever he gave that gesture, it was like a signal that something great was coming. You'd see him snap his fingers, and instantly, you knew he was about to make something awesome happen, whether it was saving the day or getting the attention of his crush, Pinky Tuscadero. The Fonz's confidence and coolness was like the spirit of the 70s, making him a beloved symbol of that era. Lucy's chocolate factory scene. This moment is a hilarious gem that everyone remembers. Lucy and her best friend Ethel get jobs at a chocolate factory, and things quickly spiral out of control. There was a conveyor belt filled with chocolates, and it starts moving faster than they can handle. As they try to wrap each piece, they end up stuffing chocolates in their mouths, their aprons, and anywhere they can. The chaos and physical comedy are simply priceless. Their frantic efforts to keep up and the outrageous situations they find themselves in are what make this scene pure comedy gold. This moment perfectly showcases Lucy's knack for getting into trouble and Ethel's willingness to join her antics. Their chemistry and timing have left a lasting impact on television history, reminding us of the magic that happens when two talented actresses deliver unforgettable performances. Even today, it still makes us laugh and captures the essence of classic TV comedy. The Brady Bunch's family theme song.
Here's the story.
You know that theme song, don't you? Every time it starts, you can't help but smile and maybe even sing along a bit. The catchy intro welcomed us into the lives of this blended family, bringing together two households with kids from different backgrounds. The song perfectly showed us what family life is like, teaching us that it doesn't always have to be traditional to be wonderful. As the catchy tune plays, we're introduced to the characters, Mike, Carole, and their 6 kids, all living under one roof. It highlights the fun and chaos of a big family, with everyone learning to get along, love each other, and share life's ups and downs. That theme song is a nostalgic reminder of the importance of family, no matter how unconventional it may be. It set the stage for countless memorable episodes, making us feel like we were part of the Brady family every time we watched. The Jetsons' futuristic family. Let's take a trip back to the Jetsons, shall we? This animated show gave us a fun and exciting look at the future, and for boomers, it was like a window into what life might be like in a tech-savvy world. The Jetson family, George, Jane, Judy, Elroy, and their lovable robot maid, Rosie, introduced us to a life filled with flying cars, space-age gadgets, and all sorts of futuristic inventions. Just imagine zipping around in a car that flies instead of drives. And Rosie, the robot maid, was ahead of her time, making household chores a breeze with her witty personality and efficient skills. But what made the Jetsons so memorable was how it blended humor with the hope of what technology could achieve. It inspired dreams of a high-tech lifestyle. making us wonder if we'd really have flying cars and smart homes one day. Even today, as we see advancements in technology, we can't help but think back to that optimistic vision of the future that the Jetsons painted for us. It was a fun reminder that while we might not be living in a flying car just yet, the spirit of innovation is always around the corner. Bewitched's nose wiggle. That little move became one of the most iconic gestures in television history. Whenever Samantha, played by the charming Elizabeth Montgomery, wiggled her nose, you knew something magical was about to happen. It was the perfect blend of whimsy and charm, capturing the imagination of viewers young and old. Just a quick wiggle, and poof, a messy situation was fixed. A delicious meal was prepared, or some chaos was transformed into order. When we watched, it made us wish we could have that kind of power in our everyday lives. Imagine being able to make chores disappear or turn an ordinary day into an adventure with just a twitch of our noses. The Twilight Zone's creepy narration.
To the Twilight Zone.
Rod Serling and his eerie voice was the perfect way to kick off each episode, setting the stage for the mind-bending stories that followed. As he introduced us to the strange and unusual, you could almost feel a chill run down your spine. Serling had this incredible ability to draw us into worlds that challenged our perceptions of reality. With every twist and turn in the plot, we found ourselves questioning what was real and what wasn't. His narration created an atmosphere of suspense and intrigue that kept us glued to our screens, wondering what bizarre scenario we would encounter next. Happy Trails with Roy Rogers. Now let's saddle up and reminisce about Roy Rogers, the legendary cowboy who brought the Wild West right into our living rooms. With his trusty horse, Trigger, by his side, Roy was the cowboy hero, and for boomers, watching him was like stepping into a grand adventure. Every episode was filled with thrilling escapades, musical numbers, and a strong sense of justice. Roy's signature songs like Happy Trails weren't just catchy tunes, they became anthems of friendship and adventure. His ability to strum a guitar and belt out a song while effortlessly riding Trigger made every episode feel like a joyful celebration of cowboy life. For many, those Saturday afternoons spent watching Roy Rogers are cherished memories of childhood that evoke a sense of nostalgia for a time when the Wild West was alive and well in our imaginations. Maz He's theme song. That hauntingly beautiful tune perfectly captured the show's unique blend of humor and heartfelt moments. While the series was a comedy set during the Korean War, the song's lyrics were deeply reflective, touching on the complexities of life, loss, and the realities of war. Hearing that theme song was a signal to sit back and prepare for an episode that could make us laugh one minute and tug at our heartstrings the next. The Partridge Family's musical adventures. This show was all about fun, family, and music, and it captured the hearts of us boomers as we followed the family on their musical road trips. Every episode was an adventure, whether they were performing at a local gig or navigating the ups and downs of family life in their colorful bus. The catchy songs they sang, like I Think I Love You, were not just hits on the show but became chart toppers in real life, making us want to sing along. It was impossible not to get caught up in the infectious energy of their music. The Love Boat's romance and fun. For boomers, this show was the perfect escape, allowing us to dream of sun-soaked vacations and the thrill of new relationships. As the ship glided through the ocean, we followed various guests, each with their own love stories and challenges. Whether it was a chance encounter, rekindling an old flame, or navigating the ups and downs of romance, the Love Boat never failed to deliver heartwarming tales. The charming crew, led by Captain Steubing, always made sure that love was in the air, adding to the show's irresistible charm. The colorful settings, fun musical numbers, and guest stars made every episode feel like a delightful getaway. The Cosby Show's family. With Cliff and Claire Huxtable at the helm, this show beautifully showcased relatable family moments that many of us could connect with, whether we were parents, kids, or somewhere in between. The dynamics of the Huxtable family were heartwarming and real. From the playful banter between Cliff and Claire to the life lessons shared with their 5 children, the show celebrated love, education, and the ups and downs of parenting in a way that resonated with viewers. We saw everything from sibling rivalries to heartfelt conversations at the dinner table, reminding us that family life is full of both challenges and joy. Little House on the Prairie's pioneer life. Watching the Ingalls family navigate life on the prairie was more than just entertainment. It was a beautiful reminder of resilience and the importance of family values. Set in the late 1800s, each episode took us through the challenges and triumphs of pioneer life, from farming and building their home to facing harsh winters and community struggles. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood's Gentle Lessons. Fred Rogers was like a warm hug in TV form, and his gentle approach to educating kids left a lasting impact on all of us boomers. Each episode was more than just a show. It was a safe space where children could learn important life lessons about kindness, acceptance, and understanding their emotions. Fred had a unique way of speaking directly to his young audience, making each child feel seen and heard. Whether he was introducing us to new friends, exploring imaginative worlds, or discussing feelings like sadness or anger, he did it with such grace and sensitivity. The Bob Newhart Show's unique humor. What set the Bob Newhart Show apart was its clever writing and the way it tackled the quirks of human behavior. Each episode felt like a hilarious therapy session where Bob would calmly navigate the often absurd issues presented by his patients. From neurotic clients to hilariously bizarre situations, Bob's reactions and deadpan delivery added layers of comedy that kept audiences in stitches.